Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to Worth It Then, Worth It Now. A segment that I run where I revisit games that I covered on the main channel, like a year or so ago, and I think deserve a bit more of a shout out. And I also try and line this video up with a sale as well. So if you find yourself here, welcome. But know that I think this game's quite excellent. I kind of did a review under the format of the time back then, so I put more time in it than most. I've spent a couple of hours this morning revisiting it yet again, and it's still excellent. I still think this game is so underrated, and the fact that it's half price right now at the time of the video might be incentive enough for you to check it out also. Okay, so what is this? It's a World War II XCOM-like, I suppose you could say. However, it takes a lot of the modern learnings from the soft explosion that we had in XCOM the past few years. It's kind of slowed down a little bit, but some examples of adapting more modern takes into mechanics, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's fresh on my mind coming off my replay, would be things like the Gears of War tactics take on more run and gun. While that was more of a combo chainer, as in you want to try and execute dudes, which is very of the flavor of Gears of War, to continue getting more turns. That's not what this is doing here, but it does adapt things like all your dudes have a pistol, which is really, low action point to use. Pretty much you can fire it no matter what if you don't have enough juice to fire your main gun, but it acts as a disruptor in that it will cancel Overwatch, for example. So there is a tactical application to using a pistol, less in the more conventional damage dealing way. So one of your dudes is locked down by an Overwatch MG42. The dudes that carry them, it is quite gamey with some of the construction of the classes, but I'm puffing my shoulders out. They're kind of big dudes, the MG guys. You can't stealth assassinate them or anything like that. But you can hit them with the pistol, do almost no damage, but you'll cancel the Overwatch, which will then free up your dude. So dare I say, there's a more puzzling component to it as opposed to a straight comparison to something like XCOM. Other thoughts off the top of my head are like the upgrade tree, which you also saw in, what was it called? Demon Hunters, the Warhammer 40k squad-based XCOM-like game, which also was very excellent, but the way that you have the sort of 4 diagonal direction branching trees is very reminiscent of the class upgrade system that you'd see there. Essentially adds another dimension to what is fairly linear in your more traditional XCOMs. So yeah, bit of the classics, bit of the new age, all excellent. What it really brings to the table personally that sort of sets it apart in its own way is the morale system. So if you think of it as both your guys and the enemies have a secondary health bar, which is morale, stress, whatever, and if you chip them to half, it will greatly impair like their action points. So it's worth doing that. But if you manage to drain the bar entirely, they will forfeit their turn, and that will happen to your guys as well. So in the machine gun example, you can get machine guns on your team depending on all the different classes of dudes that you recruit over the course of the campaign. But with the MG, it's less about strict damage. I mean, unless you catch a dude out in the open with no cover, you just shred him, but that's more for all guns. But you use that to really shred their morale and lock them down. And if you're clever and you get your positioning right, you can potentially take multiple turns off of enemy units with just one dude's go himself, so a bit of a profit. And the construction of the entire scenario lends itself very well to what you probably saw most in XCOM 2, right? This guerrilla warfare, which is reflected in the setting here. The idea is that you're sort of a partisan slapdash group that grows over time ahead of the D-Day invasion landings by, like a couple of months, running around the backfield of France. And while you drop in with just 3 sort of pretty nominal troopers, a American cookie cutter dude, a very King's English British shotgunner, and this other guy that's like a Canadian Canuck, so he's French hybrid, which is cool because all the characters talk around the campfire and learn more about each other, and as you recruit French partisans into your cause, he is a bit of a bridge between that hard sort of Americanized Western culture with Europe, specifically French. But it's good, right? So you've got that stereotypical American view of the European invasion, but very quickly you start recruiting people from all sorts of backgrounds. As a dude, I refuse not to recruit, even though I could. Like, it will give you randomly 2 dudes from the roster and you can choose which mission you do to get which one. But one of them is an Australian machine gunner, and he's got all the Australianisms. Oh, bloody oath, truth, boys, let's get out of here, you know? And it's so good. And you can give him a KFF slouch, which is pretty wild. So I probably mentioned that in my last video, because why wouldn't you if you're an Australian yourself and you actually have service background? But yeah, it's just really good coming back to it. It's quite puzzly, which I like. I liked a lot. I really like the stealth system. If you followed me on my main channel for any length of time, you're probably aware that I don't like a lot of stealth games because I feel the stealth systems aren't usually fully realized. And without getting too sidetracked, often there is a critical path. It's obfuscated. It makes it look like maybe there's 3 ways through the Splinter Cell level that you can solve, but there's only really one that the dev wants you to do. And if you stray too far from the path, often it's an in-game screen, start again. And to me, that's less stealth and more just you're trying to trial and error find the way that the dev wants you to go through what's almost a linear experience. And look, just might as well put a bow on it. That's been developed in a lot of recent stealth games with more open world and combat scenarios. And this sort of does the same thing. Because it's turn-based, it's a bit puzzly, right? The enemy telegraph pretty clearly what their patrol routes are. Some of them will stand still and rotate. Others will go, well, I'm turning around, I'm going this way. So giving away your stealth can be less about actually being caught, but more about being in a situation where you're boxed in, you don't really have a lot of options left. You know, there is leeway there, and again, to reiterate, it plays a bit more like a puzzler that happens to be stealth setting than something that's strictly stealth. But even then, and you know, there's so many things I can go on about, but I've only got so much time, and you can always check the original video. But you should get the game yourself because it's really cool. But the way that a scenario plays out, for example, is there'll be 3 layers, 3 scenario blueprints. I don't know what else to call them, right? Let's say one is strictly free-for-all stealth, right? So you start in stealth. I've just done one where I was in a tank factory, and you can creep around and stealth as many dudes as you want, and you kind of want to, right? It very much tips the scales in your balance because the enemy will start sending reinforcements once it hots up and you're in actual open contact. And while your dudes are fairly hero mode in their element, right? You've got your abilities, you kind of got better health bars up against the standard foot troops. That shit turns very quickly, not only through the course of the campaign escalating, but with reinforcements coming in. You have things like military policemen will come in, they'll be immune to certain things. They can do that disruptor pistol thing against your dudes. You get officers coming in that can kind of do their own abilities to increase the morale of troops around, and it even escalates later in the game to like Gestapo being the sort of high-end kind of Agent Smith Matrix. Like, you do not want to be in the same map as Gestapo if you can help it, because they're pretty jacked. But anyway, I'm losing the thread. It's cool. There's just so many interesting and innovative things that take something I already love. I'm a big XCOM fan, but they innovate on it really cleverly. But I'll finish my point. You can ambush infinitely in some select scenarios, and then on the other end of the scale you'll have ones where it's just a straight up action set piece firefight, no stealth, no nothing. You start guns blazing. But most of them are a hybrid in between, where you kind of have a counter at the top of the map. It'll be something like 4, where you can stealth kill X dudes, but once you've killed 4 of them, that's it. You have to go loud. You get an ambush attack, it's quite powerful, where you get to get the jump on them and fire your guns, but then it's going hot. And while that's a very gamey mechanic, why is there an arbitrary number of dudes before the game hots up? The counter, I would say, is who cares? It's a good mechanic. Like, at the end of the day, a game is meant to be played for fun, and if we played everything strictly as a one-to-one reenactment of real-life stuff, you'd have things like wall painting simulator, and it'd be the most authentic wall painting simulation that you've ever seen, and yet no one would want to play it because it would be boring as shit. Anyway, Classified France 44 might have gone under your radar, quite possibly. I think it is excellent. It's on half-price sale at the time of this video. If you're looking for something to play this weekend, you should think about checking this out. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.